Hello, I am Pam and this is my channel Made by Pam. So what am I going to do today? Well, I am going to make McCall's 2447 and I am just doing the vest. So I tried this video before and I had the video and I was in the final stages of editing and then something happened and the footage got all messed up and I was like, I'm just going to redo it. Let me go ahead and show you the one that I had just finished. I have this one. And it was a learning curve, you know, I kind of did it and I was like, you know what, I should have done some things different, and so I learned from it, and so this next one, it's going to be a little smoother than what I had before. And then the one I had made a couple years ago is this one that I made for my son when he was originally going to get married back in 2018, and then they broke things off and then he got married. I think he got married just this last year, so 2021 he got married to his sweetheart. And now I'm going to be a grandma, so that's besides the point. So I'm making McCall's. Okay, so with this vest, my first step is I'm going to show you what the pieces are. So this is the front piece that's going to be showing. Yeah, if I can get it straight. Okay, front piece. This is piece number 1. So you have 2 piece number 1s. So I have this fabric. Alright, so this is piece number 4. And there are 2 of piece number 4. And then we have piece number 1, which is the front, and there's 2 of piece 1, 2 of piece 4, that is the back for the outer and the inner, so the lining piece. And then we have piece number 5, which is this piece, and that's the inside piece, like the lining piece that goes on the inside. And then we have piece number 6, which I am just going to use the satin blue to kind of go with it. So I'm just using this, and this is piece number 6 that goes on the inside. And then I have piece number 2, which is the welt, so right here, and I have the interfacing cut out, and I'm just going to use a black interfacing, and then that, and so that's going to kind of add a nice little contrast welt on that. And then I have piece number 3, which is the belt pieces. So I have the right side of the belt piece and the left side of the belt piece, and they're 2 different sizes. And then I also have the interfacing for piece 5. So let's go ahead and get this started. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to take these pieces and we are going to pin the dart pieces together. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to this and just pin all of these together, and then we'll go on to the next step. Alright, I have all of them pinned. And so now we are going to take it over to the machine. And we are just going to sew the dart in all the pieces except for one of the back pieces, which is piece number 4. We'll leave that one untouched. But the other pieces, we will sew the darts in all of them. And the reason why we're sewing the darts in all of them all at once is because it's just easier. Alright, so this here, get you up close and personal. And we're just going to go through and we are going to have this on the center needle position. And I'm just going to go through and sew all of these, and it's going to be in super fast mode. Does that work? Alright. Make sure you do a back stitch. Okay, I have them all sewn up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and clip all of the loose threads. Okay, so I have all of them sewn together. And now I'm going to take it over to the ironing board and I am going to press all of the seams open, and I am going to iron on the interfacing for the welt pieces and piece number 5. Okay, I am over here. I'm over here at the ironing board. I am going to press the seams. So with this, I am going to use a pressing cloth. Now I did test out the fabric to make sure that the iron wasn't going to melt it. But, you know, sometimes you just gotta be more on the safe side. So I am just going to put the pressing cloth over these darts. And press them. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to press all of the seams. Okay, press the stitching. Now I'm going to press the dart towards the center. So I'm sorry you're not going to be able to see it. I could show you. Like, you just press it towards the center. I'll go ahead and do this to the other dart. So I'm going to go through and I am going to go ahead and press all of the darts, and then then I will get back to you and we're going to attach the interfacing on the other pieces. Okay, be right back. Alright, I have all of these pressed, all the darts pressed. I have all of those done. Even the blue ones. Looks absolutely fabulous. So I pressed all of those. Now the next step is ironing the interfacing onto the welt pieces. But first I am going to press these to get out some of the wrinkles, and these are just the belt pieces. These are the belt pieces that I just pressed. So I have the welt pieces. I'm just going to do a quick press on them, and then we'll attach the interfacing. Alright, so I have the interfacing, and how you tell which side is the side you attach to the wrong side of the fabric is the dots. You can see the roughness there. You can kind of hear it. That is the wrong side of the fabric, and that is like the glue side. So the smooth side you put face up, and the glue side you put down. So you put that against the fabric, and then you can attach it. So I am just going to put my pressing cloth over this. Now the interfacing won't melt because I am using SF 101. But with the delicate fabric, I want to make sure that it isn't compromised. Okay, I have the interfacing attached. Now I am going to take the interfacing for piece number 5. So I'll lay out piece number 5, and then I will take the interfacing piece and I will lay that on top of it, and then lay down my pressing cloth, and press this on. We're back over at the machine. We're going to go ahead and sew the welts. So basically we are going to take this. We have the right side there and we have the wrong side. And we are going to sew each end and leave this side open. So the long side open and just sew the ends. And it says to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so I'm going to have my needle in the left position, and I'm going to just use the side of my presser foot, and that is approximately 3/8 of an inch. I'll make sure I back stitch. Then I'll just continue on with the next piece. Go ahead and clip the threads. And now to sew the other side. I have that side all sewn. Yeah, that little arrow jut thing. And then we'll go ahead and sew this other end. Okay, those pieces are sewn, and now I'm just going to go ahead and sew these pieces together. And these are the ties. I can't quite remember. Hold on. Okay. So where we have the notch is the end that does not get sewn together. So we will start from closest to the notch. And I think that's also a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and back stitch. And we'll go ahead and sew this up. Okay, we're going to get to the end here, and I'm going to do two quick stitches, and then kind of at an angle. And with that, it just kind of leaves like a little edge that makes having that corner a little bit crisper and nicer. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do that to the other piece. Okay, so I have the ties all sewn together. We are going to go ahead and clip those and trim that seam a little bit, and we're just going to go ahead and use the pinking shear rotary cutter to trim those. Because then it will help with the fraying too, because this fabric is a finer fabric and it does fray like crazy. We got that piece done. Okay, so we have these pieces trimmed, and then I will just take my scissors here and clip this. So I trim that corner, and we'll trim this corner like that. And then with this, where it kind of goes up, we're just going to do like a little V notch in there. Then we got a little V. We'll go ahead and do that to the other side. Well, to the other piece. We got the V. Go ahead and trim those corners. Alright. Now, I need my turning tool to turn these. I have a set of turning tools here. And I'll just stick this in there. A little hole there. I'll slide it all the way in and down, just like that. And then I'm not going to use the pointed end to push it through. I'm just going to use the flat end. That helps prevent it from, you know, getting a hole in it. Same with this other piece. Alright, that piece is all done. And then we need to flip these pieces. And these are our welt pieces. Then we're just going to take the pointed end of the stick, and we are just going to go ahead and gently poke out those corners on these welts. Just like that. And we'll go over and do it to the other welt piece. Okay, and then with these belt pieces, also going to go ahead and just kind of push out those corners. Alright, I have those corners pushed out. Now I'm going to take it back over to the ironing board, and I'm going to press these, and then we'll come back here. So come along. Okay, we're over here at the ironing board, and we have our pieces. So we have our belt piece, and we are going to be using the pressing cloth so we don't ruin our fabric. And sometimes I just like to kind of have one side of it up so I can kind of see what I'm ironing and make sure it stays in place. Doesn't that look fabulous? Alright, and we're going to go ahead and do this to the next piece here. Also use the pressing cloth. Let's let it sit on there for a second and get good creases in that. Okay, so with the vest pieces and the buckles. So I have just use a vest buckle, and it's just a gold collar that I have. And how this works is you put one end of the tie, and we're going to use the shorter end of the ties to do this. So we put one end, and then we put the other end through, and we're doing the finished end, and the raw end is on the other side. We kind of pull that through like an inch. And then it says to hand stitch it on, but I find that sewing it with the sewing machine works just as fabulous. So I've got that set up, and we will take that over to the sewing machine in a moment and sew that together. But first we are going to go ahead and press these welt pieces. It's right there. And then I'll turn it over, and I'll do it again on this other side just to get the good solid crease in there. Alright, so there's one welt piece, and then we'll have this other welt piece that we'll press down. We'll make sure we put the pressing cloth on it so we don't ruin this fabulous fabric. And then we'll take it out, and then we'll turn it over, and we'll press it down one more time with the pressing cloth. Make sure we get that really good. Alright, so we have these welt pieces all ironed. And now it is time to go back over to the machine and attach the welt pieces and attach the buckles. Attach the buckle to the belt and attach these pieces to the other piece. Yeah. Okay, we're back over at the sewing machine, and we have this buckle piece, and I just have the needle just in the very far left, and this is going to glide right along the presser foot, and the needle is just going to catch right on that piece. I guess what I could do is make it just a little bit shorter and put it in the middle needle position, and it'll still attach it put that down, and it just kind of glides right along that edge, and it's going to catch the other pieces. Do a little back stitch. Right, so the buckle is all sewn on, and here is the back view. It's not always the prettiest on the back side, but on the front side it looks fabulous, I think. And so we have the buckle piece sewn on. And now for sewing on the buckle to the vest. On the vest you do have two little squares marked. And this is the piece. I haven't sewn the darts into yet, but I do have the darts marked and pinned. And so when you lay it down, I'll go ahead and show you. So when you lay it down on the table with the right side up, this buckle piece is going to go on this side. So on like your left hand side. And this longer piece is going to go on your right hand side. Okay, so then we go ahead and look in here and check where our little square markings are. To undo one of those pins real quick and line up the fabric piece in there. It's like that, and line it right up along those squares, and we'll go ahead and pin that. And then when we sew it down, we'll make sure we back stitch along those so they stay where they need to be. Then we'll go ahead and do the same thing over here. Go ahead and line that up right by the squares that we drew on the fabric. That where it needs to be. Go ahead and take another pin, and I will just take and pin that in. Make sure it stays, and then I will do the back stitch with those. So I do have it in the middle, the needle in the middle position, so I can just follow along the lines that I drew on the fabric. Alright, here we go. Alright, I'll go ahead and sew this other side. And then we'll go ahead and clip our threads. Alright, so we have those vest buckles, the vest belt piece all sewn down and attached. And we'll take that over to the ironing board in a minute and stitch that up. But first, we are going to take our piece number 1, and we are going to attach the welts. We have our piece here. We have our welt piece, and this little arrow piece goes towards the center of the body. So this is the side, and this is the center piece. We're just going to lay that down, and we have a little markings on here when I marked the lines, and we're just going to take it and kind of line it up and mark it so that this little arrow piece kind of lines up with the stitching line marking that I drew on there. If I show it to you with the actual pattern piece, it'll be easier. I have this, and this is the stitching line for the welt. So I go ahead and line that piece up. And I can't quite see it on this other side. I'm just going to put a pin through that. So I'll kind of mark. I'll line that up and line that up. So you're basically like lining up the welt like 5/8 of an inch above the stitching line, so that when you're done sewing, it is sewn where it needs to be. Alright, so we have that piece in place, and then we'll go ahead and set the other welt piece in place, and then we will sew it together. So I'll go ahead and put a little mark on those corners, since I can't see it on the other side of the fabric. So I just have like 2 pins here. I just kind of mark it. And now the center of the body piece is over here and the side is over here. So we have this, and there's this little arrow piece. And we'll go ahead and line those up. So they're like 5/8 of an inch above the sewing line. And then go ahead and pin these down And then we're going to sew them up, sew them on the thing by 5/8 of an inch. So it's stitch 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. And I was supposed to like stitch down the raw edge, but it's not necessary, I guess. Right. The first welt is attached, kinda sorta. Then I need to get a different spool of thread because I used all of the spool that I was using. Because I have a couple of random blue thread spools. That I am using to complete this project. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and sew this piece down. 5/8 of an inch. We are sewing this 5/8 of an inch on the edge. Okay. Go ahead and clip those threads. Clip those threads. Alright, so I'm pretty close to that stitching line that I drew. See, it's a little bit off, but I think I'm pretty close to the original line that I drew. And on this other one, man, I'm close. See, right there, there's a little bit there. But I'm pretty much right on the money on that today. Yay. Alright, so I'm going to take this over to the ironing board. And we are going to press that and press it up. And stitch. And then we're going to bring it back and we're going to stitch that. And then we're also going to press these darts with the little tie belts. Okay. Okay. So I'm ready to iron down the darts. And with this one, it's going to be pressed out like towards the side on the dart, so that this just lays flatter. Have that. And of course I'm using a pressing cloth, so it makes it more difficult to see. Alright, that looks fabulous. Go ahead and iron this piece down. Go ahead and press it. Pressing those darts. Alright. Go ahead and do up this belt piece. Like that. And will kind of also help keep them out of the way when it comes time to sew up the edges. Fabulous. All right, that piece is done. Now we are going to go ahead and press up this, and it did say to trim this raw edge of the welt piece. I'm going to get my cutting board here and my pinking shear rotary cutter and just line that down. I'm just going to go ahead and go along and trim that just a little bit, not too much. And do that on this other one also. All right. That piece is trimmed, and then we're going to go ahead and press this piece up. It makes it a little more difficult having to use a pressing cloth, but I don't want to ruin my fabric. And this fabric isn't going to melt per se, because I did test out a sample of each piece and press the iron on it, and it seemed to be okay. But sometimes you just don't want to take the extra chance, you know? Rather be safe than sorry. That looks fabulous. And then we'll go ahead and do that to this other piece. And press it down. Alright. Turn it over and double check it on the other side. And also I do the pressing to help erase those friction pen markings that I did put on my fabric. We don't want those markings to stick around. Although it looks like some of it is going to stick around. It's okay, you can't see it on the other side, so we'll be fine. Well, I thought you couldn't. It's okay. It'll just blend in. No big deal. Alright, so we have that. We have that piece. We're going to stitch that down. And we're going to take this piece back over to the machine. Alright. Alright, we're back over at the sewing machine. And we're just going to go ahead and stitch these welt pieces down. And I am using my left needle position and just kind of centering that part of the welt piece on the center marking of my foot. So has these little lines, so I use that little line there to line up the welt piece. Yeah. Sometimes, not always, because it's a little bit different coming over to the other side, because I just kind of want to work my way from the bottom, like the bottom edge of the welt upwards. sometimes that gets stuck a little bit and it doesn't want to move. I think because of the extra bulk of the fabric from the folding over the welt. There's one welt piece attached. And now we're going to go ahead and attach this other welt piece. Go ahead and sew that piece down. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and sew this other side. Alright, we have those welt pieces attached. Go ahead and go through and clip my extra threads. Okay, that piece is attached. That's fabulous. Alright. Next part is attaching piece number 5 that we put the interfacing on to piece number 6. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go along this, right along here, and we are going to sew half an inch in from the edge. We are going to sew a stay stitching. Yeah. And it's just on the inner curve. Okay, we have our stitching, our stay stitching sewn. And it's basically just a line that's going to show you how far you can clip in those those curves. Because you do want to make sure that you're clipping those so that the fabric will kind of bend to your will to attach it to this piece. So we'll go ahead and set that piece aside, the machine, and just going to go ahead and go along and clip little V's into the fabric. And we're just going to do this on piece number 5. Piece number 6 we don't cut the V's into, just piece number 5 until after we get it sewn together. And we just clip those little V's into it up until we get to the notch that we had started out with for our fabric. And then we'll go ahead and do the same on this other piece number 5. Alright, now we're going to take our piece number 6. So this is piece number 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it down on the cutting mat. I'm not going to cut, but this is just my table. So lay that down. And see, it goes up with that piece. See how nicely it looks together? But we're going to flip it this way, and so we just need to kind of ease it together with that. So we're going to go ahead and mark or notch it match our notches together that we have marked previously. Let's kind of go along and line up our edges. Then we'll go along and we'll just kind of ease that into the rest of it. Alright, we have those pinned together, and now we're going to go ahead and take and stitch this down 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. So we have this all sewn up, and we're just going to take our I'm going to use my pinking shear rotary cutter, and I'm just going to trim the seam, and then I'm going to clip, and then we're going to go and iron the seam open. See? I have my original stay stitching line, and then that line, and then I have my sheared edges. And do it to this other piece also. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and take our scissors and we'll just clip in, just do a V-notch pretty much along the whole seam, even through that stay stitching, just not through the actual stitching of the fabric together. Yeah. I have that all clipped. I'll go ahead and do it to this other piece also. Okay, have that all clipped. And we'll take it back over to the ironing board, and we are going to go ahead and iron and press these seams open. So we're going to press the seams open over at the ironing board. Okay, so I have that piece pressed. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it around this other side. and do a top press. Okay, this piece is ready. Doesn't that look fabulous? Alright, then we will head and press this seam. Press those seams open. Part, and then I'll turn it this way. Finish pressing those seams open. Okay, that seam is pressed open, and then I'll turn it around and press the top side. Okay, that is pressed. Now time to take it back and sew the shoulder seams together and stitch around the edging. Okay, so we're back at the sewing table. So we're going to take our inside piece of our back and the inside lining pieces, and we're just going to go ahead and line those up with the notches. Just going to go ahead and pin those together. Have those pinned, and then we'll pin together this other shoulder piece. Line up those notches. We have the inside pieces of the shoulders lined up. Now for the other piece, well, this is a piece that we added the belt to. Lay that down, and then we're going to take the pieces that we added the welts to. We'll lay those down. Lay that down, match up our notches. Okay. And then we'll take this other piece and we'll line up those notches. Okay, now we just need to use a sewing machine and sew those shoulder seams together. Here's our machine. We'll sew them together at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. That piece is sewn together. We'll sew this other piece together. And then that piece is all sewn together. So we have that seams all sewn together, and we are going to go ahead and press these seams open. Okay, I have those seams ironed open. Then we'll press this seam open. Okay, so have that seam pressed open, and then we'll take it back and pin all the way around both, and then sew those together. Okay, we're back over to the sewing table, and we're just going to take and we are going to So I have the pieces, and I am just going to pin these pieces together. So enjoy the show. So I have all the edges pinned together. Then I'm going to take it to my machine and sew all the edges except for the side seam openings. Those are not going to be sewn. Those have to stay open for later. I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way around. Alright, we have this all pinned, and we're just going to take it and sew it on the machine. We're going to do a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to leave the edges open. So here we go. Enjoy the show. Okay, we have that sewn up. I'm going to take out the pins I have on each of the ends. And trim some thread. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to take our pinking shear blade, rotary cutter, and we're just going to trim part of that seam allowance and basically just kind of help prevent the extra fraying that happens. Yeah. Okay, I have all my edges trimmed. Now I'm just going to take and just trim like just really close to the end, basically just trimming those loose threads. To help cut down on the fraying a little bit. Now the next thing I'm going to do is on these curves, I'm just going to take and just put a little notch or V in those curves so that they will take shape a little bit better. So we've got it, that curve. We're also going to do it on this curve. These are the openings for the armholes. And then I'll go to the other side and do that side. Okay, we're over here at the ironing board. We have it all sewn all the way around. All the way around. All sewn up. Just gonna go along and do a quick press along all the seams. my pressing cloth here. So now that I have pressed and set all those seams, I'm going to pull all the pieces through the edges here. I let go of it a little bit too quick. Alright, so now that we have it turned, we're going to go ahead and press these seams. So press the edges, which does make it more complicated since we're using a pressing cloth on the whole entire thing. We press that seam. Work on pressing these other seams. So enjoy the show. I have all the seams pressed. Doesn't that look fabulous? And then I just need to attach the side here and sew it up, and then attach this other side and sew it around, and then I'll end up with a hole about that big, and it'll be great. Alright, so we have the seams all ironed. So now we need to attach the sides together. Like sew these sides together. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of open it up from this end and I kind of feed that in the ends. Kind of flip it. Okay, so we just kind of have that like this. So you have the right sides together. We'll open up the seam. We'll open up this other seam here. Good, and piece those together like that. We'll just butt them up next to each other. Go ahead and pin it to keep it in place. Okay. Go over to this other side and pin these pieces to keep them in place. As I struggle. All right. And it does have a little notch, so we just match up those notches on the ends. Okay, now we need to do is take the machine and sew around the end. And we'll just do a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So here we go. Alright, so we have that all attached together, and we just go ahead and pull it back out. And those are all matched up. Just like that, and then we'll just need to put a good press on it. But that side is all finished. Wasn't that easy? Now for this other side. It's not quite as easy, but it's not too bad either. So we'll just go ahead and turn it so that as we're sewing it, we will be sewing like the outside of it together first. Well, this will just line up our notches also. We have our notches. We're going to line those up. And we'll pin those. We'll just go ahead and work around. When we start sewing this up, after we get it pinned, we'll kind of start over the seams a little bit. So this is like the lining piece, and when we sew those up, we'll start over by the notch as we sew it and sew around, and then we'll continue to sew it until we can't sew it in the round anymore. And then when we can't sew it anymore, we'll finish, and then we will stitch. We'll turn it out and press it, and then stitch down the rest of the hole. So let's go ahead and stitch this up. I'm just kind of flipping it and stitching the sides together, and it'll all work out. This way I have less hand stitching to do for that, because I don't want to hand stitch. The less hand stitching, the better. Get you up there so you can see this. See the action. And we're still using a 5/8 inch seam allowance also. So I just basically work it until I can't fit any more there. So now that I've gotten as much sewn together on the machine I can in the round, here is my tiny little hole. I believe I got all that sewn, and then I just have a small little hole. And the hole that I have left open is like 1.5 inches. So like 1.5 inches hole opening is all that I have. Now I'm going to take it back over to the ironing board and press these seams, and then we'll do the stitching to close that up, and then we'll go from there. Okay, here we are at the ironing board. We have our pressing cloth, and we're just going to kind of line up the ends there, press those seams down. I'm working this top part next to the armhole. We'll press that seam. And then this is where our little opening is. And we can just take and do a stitch there and do like a stitch in the ditch on the other side. And it will just stitch that in place. Won't even have to do any hand stitching. Go ahead and press this piece. Then we have this nice little edge here where the seams join up together. Alright, so I have that all pressed. Now just to stitch this piece, and then it will be on to adding the buttons and the buttonholes. Yay! Okay, we just need to sew up this little hole. We're kind of going to do a stitch in the ditch. And line up just a section that we need to be stitching up. I don't want to overdo it. Have a small section here. Okay. And then put that piece there. Alright. I'm hoping that's going to be good. I think we're good. So I just have it pinned just where it needs to be stitched. And we're just going to do a stitch in the ditch section. Well, being that this is also stitching on brown, you can kind of see that stitching. And apparently I did a horrible job. So I will undo that stitching. And I will just redo it. That one just didn't work out like I wanted it to. I thought it would. I'm going to go ahead and unpick this, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. Alright, so I got it unpicked. And then I got it repinned, and I've changed the thread color to brown so it won't show up as evident on this other side. Well, let's try this again. And we're just going to start it like right before the pin. And hopefully I catch it all this time, right? Right, so I've stitched that all up. You can see the stitches a little bit, but it's not as evident because it is brown and it kind of blends in. On this other side, you can also see it. It's not as close to the edge as I would like, but I did end up catching it all, so it is all sealed up. So that part is finished. And then we just need to do the buttonholes. And I was contemplating doing the blue, but I'm like, I should probably just switch it up to brown. And if I switch it up to brown, I'd want to switch the bobbin thread to brown also. So I'm going to go ahead and get the bobbin thread ready so that I can do the buttonholes. So I have picked out some buttons. So hopefully that goes okay. There's blue and white. There's no brown in the buttons, but that's okay. And I have my buttonhole foot. And then I just make sure that the button is still kind of loose in there so that the buttonhole's not too tight. And I've got my buttonhole set and put down the lever. And then I have the marks for the holes, and the holes are just going this way. And so when I line it up, I'll just kind of center the opening of the foot right on that, and that'll work out great. And I don't like to use the foot pedals, so I'm going to unplug it so that it's all completely machine. I'll turn down my speed so it doesn't go too fast. Alright. Oh, forgot to move that. Alright. And remove the buttonhole foot, switch that up, and then we have our button foot. Put that in there for later. Right. So we have the buttonholes sewn. I just need to clip all the threads. Now we are just going to use some fray check. And I just like to put that on where the buttonhole is going to be split open. Shit. I'm out a little bit too much at a time. Okay, so we have that, and then we just use the seam ripper. We put it in, and we just use it to kind of rip that buttonhole piece open. Just a little cutter. Alright, buttonholes are all completed. And then we just need to add the buttons. So we'll go ahead and line this up. Where we need to be here. Just like that. All right. And use our friction pen. All right. So now we're going to attach the buttons. Work from the top. Oh, and these are 4-hole buttons. Whoops. Okay, have that button attached. Alright, buttons are all attached. Now I'm just going to go ahead and clip all the threads. Alright, buttons are all done. Now I'm just going to a dab of spray check on them. Kind of keeps that thread from unraveling, I hope. Alright. Here we go. Okay. Buttonholes are done. Buttons are done. So that means we are officially finished. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little sew along of this jacket and McCall's 2447.